genuine? Do we see evidence of genuineness, of genuine conversions here? Is the gospel that's being communicated actually sound and a biblical gospel? And if so, if God is at work and we see His work there, what do we need to do? How can we provide help? How can we provide support in order that a church might be established in Antioch? So you see, it was critical for the maintenance of the unity of the churches and for the maintenance of doctrinal purity and for the proper spread of the gospel that there be some kind of accountability in these matters. And let me add that this is still true today. Did the light come on? Those who engage in pioneer gospel work or in church planting should always be accountable to a sound, already established body of believers. That's one of the practical applications I want us to see from this. When you look at the church planting methods of these early Christians in Acts, this is what you find. As the gospel went out from Jerusalem into Samaria through just outdoor gospel preaching by Philip and people were converted, the church in Jerusalem was involved. They sent men there to check things out, to investigate what was happening. And there was a connection between the church in Jerusalem and then the planting of the church in Samaria. You see the same thing here with the planting of the church in Antioch. And later, when Paul went out on his missionary church planting endeavors, he didn't go out as a lone maverick, Lone Ranger preacher who just decided, I'm going to go plant a church. No, he was sent out. We read that earlier, by the church in Antioch. And he was accountable to them. And as you go through the book of Acts, he would come back, he and his companions, to Antioch and give an account of the work that God was doing among them. So even the Apostle Paul was connected to and accountable to the local church for his missionary church planting work that he did. So that's important for us to grasp. I'm going to say more about that in this series. But as we look at the New Testament, it is churches that plant churches. It's not just individuals who decide, I want to go out and plant a church. No, it's men who are sent out, and they're accountable to the church. And it's the church that is to be engaged in the work of planting churches, whether it be churches in a local area, if we're talking about home missions, or we're talking about foreign missions. It's the work of the church. So there was this accountability here that is right and proper. It was important that this new outbreak of gospel advancement have the endorsement and the validation of the church at Jerusalem. So the church decides to send a representative to investigate, and not only to investigate, but if indeed this is a work of God, to provide encouragement and support and regular ministry to the people. Well, in the time remaining this morning, I want us to focus on who it was the church at Jerusalem sent. And that's as far as we'll get today. We read in verse 22b, and they send out Barnabas to go as far as Antioch. And we're told in verse 24 that he was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and of faith. Now, again, if you had been reading through the Acts, you'd got to this point, you would know, many of you already know, this isn't the first time we hear about Barnabas. We're first told about him back in chapter 4 of Acts. You remember that after the day of Pentecost, because there were a lot of Jews from all over the known world at that time who were in Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit was poured out. There were over 3,000 souls converted, and this is a lot of people that needed to be cared for and taken care of, and some of them were poor. And we find there, you remember that some of the people in the church would sell their property or bring goods that they had and give it to the church to be distributed among those who are in need. Well, one of those who is mentioned is a man named Joseph, who sold a piece of property and that could be distributed by the church. But we're also told there that this man Joseph had a nickname, and his nickname was Barnabas. So Barnabas is actually a nickname, and we're told that the name means, you remember what the name means? It means son of encouragement. Son of encouragement. So that's the first time we hear about Barnabas. And we're told that this is how they referred to him, how he was known, a son of encouragement. Now, surely, if they gave him this nickname, we can assume that this must have been a very noticeable and prominent trait of Barnabas. Indeed, the use of the word son, bar, to indicate a man's character, that was a very common Jewish practice. So when people thought of Barnabas, they thought of a man who was an encourager of the brethren, a man who excelled in the gift of encouragement, son of encouragement. We have a form of the noun, a noun form of the verb parakaleo, which combines two thoughts, para to the side, kaleo to call. The word literally means calling someone to one's side. And it was used primarily to refer, again, to bringing encouragement, consolation, or comfort to someone. So Barnabas was especially known for this in the church. This is what we might call his most prominent gift. Now, I want us to consider this gift or grace of encouragement as we see it in Barnabas. But as we do so, there's something we need to